Mark Lefebvre.
Shane,
Hello?
how's it going? Let me check my mic. I thought as much.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear? I'm
Yes.
using my mic and then it went crazy. That's good.
Okay. If maybe I'll just we'll do like a solid like intro, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Good idea.
I'll do that. All right. So thank you everyone for watching. Today I have Mark Lefebvre, the my friend and one of the you run. I think of you as running the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server with a number of other people, but you and Manuel are the faces that I see most. So that's how I would introduce you. But I don't know if there's anything else you uh, think that you do on there, or anything else that you do that I might not know, um, that you might want to share, just so people know.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I don't technically run the server. I don't administer the server, right? But there's a number of thought leaders on the server, I would call them, right? Manuel and I are certainly the two biggest. We spend the most time there. And we have a big notes file. We're taking notes, right? We're working with John Vervaeke's work. That server's based on his Awakening from the Meaning Crisis 50 hours series, right? John takes 50 hours to make one point, basically one argument. But in doing so, I think he sets up this science of meaning that I've talked about elsewhere before, like with Paul Vanderklay and with the Meaning Code on the Meaning Code channel. And John's got a number of projects that he's interested in seeing people work on, and he doesn't influence anything we do directly, but people are gathered there around his work. So they're talking about the religion that is not a religion. We do meditation every day, right? We have a group Lectio Divina practice. We work on other practices. We've got book club, right? We go over Jordan Peterson's work every Tuesday nowadays. We're just redoing the his Maps of Meaning series. So we get a lot going on, and there's Manuel and I in particular are pragmatists. So we like to have stuff to do, not just stuff to talk about. But yeah, certainly I'm one of the thought leaders. Manuel and I are sort of the faces because we're there all the time. Manuel was on Bridges of Meaning originally, right? And then he found Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. So we sort of took him from you BOM guys. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right. Manuel, he was one of the probably the first person I talked to that I like, or that commented on something that I said. Like the first, like I could always count on criticism from an interesting angle. Like I remember I ran in and I was like, oh, I've got this thing where I was having some trouble with this guy at work. Like there was some like tension there, and basically uh like Manuel, like his chastisement or something was like, oh, don't be having like um don't measure yourself against other people, but he said it in a much funnier uh uh way that might not be the most appropriate. But I mean, yeah, yeah. So that was, yeah. And then as far as like what you guys are doing, like it definitely seems like I don't want to use, I don't know why uh carnival is like just the image of a lot of things happening, and it's kind of like has a little bit of a wildness, but it's still very like contained. Like you guys like seem to like, yeah, I don't know why that image of like the wild is coming up, or like the carnival, like a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah. We certainly try to keep a lot of stuff going on, right? Because we don't just want to keep people interested, right? We want to keep people
Yes.
there. so that, because our thing is wisdom journey, right? And it's a journey, and there are practices, right? John talks about practices, and you're supposed to have an ecology of your own practices. So there's a bunch of practices. You pick the ones that are right for you, and you do those, right? You practice them every day, right? Or some of them at least once a week, or whatever it is. And so yeah, we're trying to keep that spirit going, and the other spirit of engaging with people in conversation and helping them out, listening to their problems and all the sort of standard stuff that that you need to do, and helping people to understand their own their own framework, right? Like what are you resting your actions on? Like what do why are you mad at people? Are you mad because of them, or are you mad because of you? Because sometimes you're mad because of you, right? And that sort of goes back to that Jungian shadow thing that Jordan Peterson talks about, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like the pointing out of your your own gaps, or definitely like helping people see their framework, right? And
Yeah.
seeing it clearly, and like noticing what the parts are. I know you guys have been definitely help me do that, like, and that's yeah, that's helpful to say the least. And I think the fact that you guys are doing that for like so many people, or just consistently, or just knowing that you guys are doing that even when I'm not like around, it's like, wow, there's a lot of like people's I'm people's gears are much more, or people's like, yeah, systems are much more apparent to them on a wide scale, I think, like, because I mean, I might even say like uh, a grand scale, just because of like what you guys are up to, and I think like it's really cool. Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm glad that, that we're helping people in some sense anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's like Peterson says, you don't always know what you're up to. And it's like, we kind of point that out. And a lot of times it's just quite, we just ask people questions like, oh, what do you think about that? Why did you do that? Right. And then sometimes they get very upset, they project, and they're like, you said that I was a bad person. I'm like, what? No, nobody said that. Like, where do you get right? And then that's them, that's their own self-doubt, right, projecting on themselves, and then of course they got to have a place to put it, because how could I call myself a bad person, and so we run into problems like that. But the awakening from the meaning crisis discord is supposed to be this rich environment where people are able to engage and have these deep discussions, right, these deep important discussions, and get to know, and engage in practices, and get to know themselves better, and get on their wisdom journey to wherever it's going to lead them.
Yeah, super important. Can you, 1 second, Mark? Can you
Sure.
hold on 1 second? Okay, thanks. Sorry, fam was trying to but okay, so uh sorry about that. So it was, yeah, people's wisdom. So you said people going on their wisdom journey. And then earlier you talked about well, I guess I like want to ask like what the connection with the Bridges of Meaning server is, and how you like what how you guys is like, I don't know, ecology of practices, like why you guys why bring that up to the Bridges of Meaning people, and like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, Manuel had like I said, he started there first, right? So he was like originally on that server, and he was trying to work through something, right? Like as we all are, right? Like why are we on Discord? Like what are we doing all wandering around in Discord?
Yeah. There's a little bit of there's like a some craziness that you kind of want to wrench, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, whatever he was looking for, he didn't find there. And I affectionately call BOM the crazy Christians, right? Because and they're not all Christians, right? They're not all crazy, although maybe they are. Sometimes I wonder. And Paul leads that, so he's like,
Yeah.
um, yeah. I mean, so that's sort of, his, a lot of the people that came to Awakening started on BOM, right? Tyler and Nick and a bunch of other people who were, some of
Yeah.
whom, I don't see anymore. Um, they kind of all started there, right? And then moved on to kind of seed other Discord servers or whatever. And I mean, Manuel would have to tell you his, all of his reasons, but one of the things he said he liked was, we were doing stuff, and he's a pragmatist. He wanted to do stuff. And BOM was sort of in its early days, and they didn't have quite the stuff going on that they have now. Although, like there's a couple book clubs, right? There's knitting, which is kind of interesting, but they're not doing daily meditations, right? And we've actually got a European meditation and a North American meditation. So technically we've got two sets. And in the beginning, actually, we meditated twice a day. Manuel runs yoga, right? So there's yoga going on. There's these book clubs. He's running the Maps of Meaning thing. We've had book clubs before. We still have a book club based on John's Cultivating Wisdom course, which is the Western traditions. It's Epicureanism, Stoicism, and Neoplatonism. And that's based on the book Wisdom of Hypatia. So we've got all this stuff going on, and we've got a rich field of stuff to talk about, right? Because we have a new. So one of the things, in my opinion, that you get with Vervaeke's work is a framework of meaning. So now, it's a science of meaning. It's in a framework. Now you can talk about it, right? Before it was very hard to talk about meaning. Like, what do you mean meaning? Like, geez, I was talking to Kira. She's one of our people on it. She's on Bridges of Meaning too occasionally, but she spends a lot of time on our server. And she said, well, I'm using the word meaning this way. And I was like, oh, that's not wrong, but it's not the way I use the word meaning. It's hard because sometimes we don't have all the words we need, right? So there's definitely gaps in the language that cause us to equivocate, as John would say, on how we're using our words. And so even just engaging with meaning is a difficult thing. Like it's not always clear and straightforward and upfront. So like it's it's not that easy to talk about until John comes along, and now all of a sudden we can talk about Peterson and what he's doing, at a larger scale. We can't just say like, well, Peterson says this. Like now we can say Peterson talks about these things because they point to these other things. Right now that we have a science of meaning, we can go, oh, this is why this is important. This is so now we can deconstruct, although I don't particularly care for deconstruction, but we can deconstruct what Peterson's doing and kind of understand the important parts and tease them away from let's call them the not so important parts, and figure out what that means in terms of going forward, like what's actionable and why would we want to have that action. So like one of the discussions we had yesterday, I think, was Manuel was rather upset. He's like, oh, integration, which is something we struggle with. People have these experiences, whether it be in Lectio Divina or in their meditation, and they don't integrate, right? So it doesn't change them. Right? It's like they bash into the wall and they don't figure out to go around the wall. Like, oh, something told you something. You should integrate that with your life so that it's everywhere, right? And he said, well, we're reinventing the wheel. We should figure out what people used to do for integration. And I said, if I think about it historically, people walked everywhere. Like they didn't, or if they took a horse and buggy, it was 30 miles a day max, right? That's why you see a lot of towns are 30 miles away from other towns or 25 miles away from other towns. That's because up until we had cars, that was 1 day's travel. And the reason why there's a town there is because 1 day's travel and then you've got to camp out. Well, if it's a trade route, right, you've got to put every 30 miles an inn.
That's wild how that stuck. How that stuck. Man.
But also you're driving a horse and carriage. You're only going to do 30 miles in like 8 hours or whatever it takes. I don't know, right? There's a lot of time to think. Like, you're not. It's not like you're engaged. Like nowadays, we're bombarded, right? Like, what are we doing 8 hours a day? Well, some of us are, sitting there with Cheetos, Mountain Dew, and a controller, and we're just bombarding ourselves. We have no time to think. You can't think. You gotta kill that guy or shoot that thing or jump over these things and hit that magic mushroom on the screen or whatever it is, right? We're keeping ourselves way too busy in some sense, so we don't have time to integrate anymore. So maybe we do need deliberate integration practice, which we've put into all of, or maybe not all, but most of our practices now. We actually intentionally sit for a minute afterwards. and we look up because we're using the neuroscience that John gave us. Looking up changes how you think. Okay. So we look up. It's like, oh, and that's part of our integration. And then we have intentionality, right? That's part of what we're doing with the practices is you have to go in with an intent. Why are you here? What are you doing this for? Okay, right? And so, we're developing, to the extent that we can and building on existing practices to make them better. And integration is one of those things we talk about, like, oh, this is hard. What does this mean? Did people do this? Like, how did they do it? And I think, yeah, they just had a lot more time with fewer distractions in nature, we'll say.
Okay. So is your guys's for integrating, is it like I don't know, like I think of like when you you're working or you're doing something, and then the being able to sit afterwards and kind of like um at work, lunchtime might be a good integration uh period, right? Where you like sit and you literally chew on something while you chew on uh like what happened, or like there's, I don't know, there's things that times that I would call like I think in leisure, if you are integrating, right? Like integrating the work uh you did. So I don't know if that's sort of like how do you guys frame your integration practices, or how do you like, is that just in the voice chat?
Well, a lot of our practices, we write them out, right? So we have, like I said before, we've got notes. We've got like 190 pages of notes, and then other documents. Like that's just our main notes file.
Yeah.
And then,
And I could be equivocating there on like leisure slash rest and integration, but I don't know if that's, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we have deliberate practices written out, right? And then part of those practices is containerization. And then the part of putting in the containerization is putting in the integration at the end. Put the intent at the beginning, the integration at the end. And then, yeah, what is the role, in, we'll say, in your life in general of rest and relaxation, and what does that mean? Like, what are you doing when you're resting, and should that be an intentional practice? Like, I don't know, like, do we have a rest practice? I don't think we do, right? And maybe we should say, like, you should take an hour a day, right, to rest, like to deliberately rest. Or one of the things we were talking about is there's some utility taking a day off, we'll say, from technology or something, right? Like just 1 day a week, right? Just no technology, like at all, right? Zero. Maybe that's adaptive. I mean, the Jews have been doing that for a while, and they're still around. People have been trying to get rid of them for a long time. It hasn't worked. So, they got something going on.
I mean, smart. They're smart.
Yeah, they're smart and they're deliberate about their practices, and they have these interesting rituals. And I have several Jewish friends actually, and one of them I went to see on a Saturday a year or two, a couple of years back now, and he's just like, oh yeah, come on over if you're in town. I had flown back up to New England to visit family, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to catch up, and we went and we met up, and he said, would love to have you join us for lunch, and I said, that would be wonderful. I'd love to join for a meal. And he said, well, we have this complicated ritual thing. And he's like, you don't have to do it. And I was like, no, of course. Like, I'm honored that you include me in your religious ceremony. That's amazing. And, it's your food. Like, absolutely. Like, yeah, like show respect for other religions. That's how I grew up. You don't talk about them, but, if somebody says, like, you enjoy it. If somebody blesses you or whatever, whether you're a believer or not, you're gracious about it, because there's a lot of different religions in New England and everybody's kind of crammed together. So you got to deal with these things. So, so yeah, I engaged in, hand washing and the towel and the whole crazy thing. And, I'm not sure I'd know how to do it again. Like, you'd have to show me. It was very much a just do what I do thing, right? Which is interesting, right? Not procedural instructions. Do what I do. Oh, okay. That's not a procedure necessarily. You can break it down into one, but it's like, oh, okay. So, those things are important. And then, like, they have days of rest, right? They have times where they go without, right? They do it all deliberately. And as a result, they have some resilience, some, if we want to use Nassim Taleb's term, anti-fragility, that enables them to continue on through horrific events and lots of resentment, we'll say. So there's something to it.
Yeah, yeah. The hands-on approach, there's something like, it's almost like you're well, it's embodied, and it's going to make a uh people, like, at least confident in their ability to act in the world, and at the end of the day, that's as much thinking, like, thinking's good, but being actionable, it's like that's a step above what everyone who's not acting, that's a
Right.
step above that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And and no, that sounds really like the step by step procedural stuff. There's something very, I don't know, spiritually uh strengthening about doing anything. Yeah, step
Yeah,
by step.
certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing something over doing absolutely nothing. Right? Like Peterson talked about this. Like, what are you going to replace it with? Yeah, exactly. What do you replace action with inaction? That's not better. If it not doesn't guarantee it to be better, but it's definitely better to do things than not to do things at some scale. So, and being deliberate and intentional about things is better than just kind of doing random stuff. So it all kind of stacks up, right? It just stacks up. So yeah, yeah, and that's what we're all about on the Discord server, is getting these things right. And I mean, someday, like, we have big dreams. Like, someday we'll do in-person events, right, around the country or something, right, where we'll be stepping through these sorts of things, deliberately. And there's an indication that this can be very powerful. So I went to the Billy Graham Library, which is in North Carolina, right up the street from me. And Paul's been talking about it lately in his videos, and I'm flattered. It was a wonderful experience. I'm not sure quite what to make of it, but it's interesting because you go through this journey. It's a journey. I mean, they call it the Walk of Faith, and you do the Walk of Faith, and it's a bunch of videos. On the surface, it's just a bunch of videos. Yeah, just going from theater to theater, and it's Cracker Barrel meets church, which was Paul's explanation, which I thought was brilliant, because Paul's brilliant. Let's face it. And yeah, I mean, there's these set pieces, and then there's a video, and then in the self tour, all the gospel sayings are way up high, like way. You got to look way up, And it's that looking up thing that John talks about. So all the gospel sayings are up high on big high res screens. And then, towards the end, you walk through. I mean, you walk in the building, you walk through a cross, a big glass cross. It's the front of the building, a big glass cross, and the bottom of the doors, right? You walk through the cross. At the end of the walk of faith, you walk through crosses. It's really strange. And then that, I mean, I don't know what's going on. Something's going on though, because, and you think, can you capture that reliably in an in-person event? Like, I don't know, but I'm anxious to find out. Like, maybe you can. Like, maybe you can engender transformative experiences in your wisdom journey through physicality, through doing something physical, with other people. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Even, I mean, anything, like even there's like running clubs, like people get a huge like going a huge rush from not just a rush, but that is a transformative experience. Like, oh, I can, like, it's like I don't know how you explain it, but there's something, yeah, something um awesome about even just something simple, right?
Right.
And
Well, and there's two aspects to it too, right? Like, so running is great. Like, everybody should run, right? I mean, I don't run. I'm not going to run. I don't even run when chased. I'm just too lazy. But you can run, and it's interesting. So I have this practice I talk about that someday I'll write up. Called Zen sweeping, where you just do a regular thing and it calms your body down, and that calms your mind down. And you say Zen sweeping, and people like almost instant, like, I don't even have to explain it. I just say Zen sweeping, and people are like, oh, right. It's a form of embodied meditation, right? And then what you're doing, it's an excellent treatment for anxiety, because I suffer from anxiety. So, like, I developed it to fix my anxiety, and it just so happens that I tell other people about it, and it helps them too, right? It's like a wonderful thing. And like, you literally sweeping or doing the dishes or anything with a lot of muscle memory will help you, because your body's busy and it's doing something, and your body's going, oh, I know what I'm doing. And when your body knows what it's doing, it sends a signal to the mind, hey, we know what we're doing. And then your mind goes, well, blah, 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 oh, wait, we know what we're doing, right? Oh, okay. My body says I know what I'm doing, and it calms your mind down. That's how it works. And that's in the literature. Like, you can just look it up. That definitely, like, it's the thing. When you smile, you get happier, right? So what you do embodied does bleed into your thoughts. And running is the same thing. So I explained to Jonathan, one of the guys on our server, about Zen sweeping, and he had been running. And then he said, well, now my running's different, because I'm intentionally using it as a form of meditation and paying attention to the running differently, just based on the description of Zen sweeping. And so now he's engaged in running differently. And then he runs by himself. But then there's this second component that I think you were on about earlier. Like, well, there's something about doing these same things with other people. And then so, like, we have a meditation, right, that we do daily. And then the best part of the meditation is not the sit. It's a critical part, got to do it. The best part of the meditation is the conversation we have afterwards with one another. And what we're talking about is either our sit, proximal, like something we just did together, even though we weren't together because it's all online, or our wisdom journey in general. Like, oh, I was contemplating this the other day, or, oh, this came up, or, oh, this synchronicity happened. And it's strange, but that's where all the magic happens, because Peterson's been talking about this, I think, for a while, but like, we outsource our sanity, right, to groups. Like, it's the groups around us, it's the communities that we're embedded in, because we're part of more than one community, that help us stay sane. And if you take us out of those communities, we can't maintain sanity, right? We can't do it. So if you're on a wisdom journey, you need more of that, I would think, right? And so having people that you're meditating with in what's called the Sangha, which is some Sanskrit word that we've co-opted, that's important, and it's the best part of the meditation. And I can tell you two things about the meditation after meditation talk. One is, what we say doesn't make any sense, and the other one is, everybody knows everything that everyone else is talking about somehow. It's a little bit of magic in my mind. Like, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, just, it doesn't make any sense. And it is something magical about being around people with different perspectives. I think that in the, being in community, being around other people, I think that opens you up over and over again to the fact that your perspective is not the only one, right? And that could be scary if you do it alone. You go like, oh, it's not the only perspective. It becomes like an H.P. Lovecraft story or something, right? Very scary, very existentially dreadful, we'll say, or horrific or something. But if someone's been there and they're saying, no, I have this perspective, then it's safe and that there's another perspective. So there's other safe perspectives, maybe. And maybe that's what's going on, is that you've got 3 or 4 people, or maybe 5 or 6 people, or however many people, and they're giving you slightly different perspectives, or maybe totally different perspectives, but they're still here. They didn't get eaten by a dragon. That's pretty good, right? Because maybe some of your perspectives get you eaten by dragons. Like, I believe that happens to people. I've seen people go mad, right? I've been down that path. You can get pretty crazy about things pretty easily when you're isolated in particular, but you can go to dark places, but with other people around who have been to places, it's like, oh, well, that place is safe to go, or relatively safe to go, or maybe I have some idea of what the dangers might be. And so it's good to know, oh, well, there's other perspectives that are safe that I can engage with. Oh, well, that's interesting. Maybe that's what community gives you, right? Is that sense. And maybe that sense is important because now it opens up the world. Like, now you see positive potential in the world and not just negative potential. So positive potential is something like awe, and negative potential is something like horror. John talks about this in his Awakening from the Meaning Crisis series and some other places too, right? The difference between awe and horror, and you want to go towards awe and away from horror, right? That, to us, that's something like the line of beauty, maybe, right? Something that could be terribly beautiful or awesomely beautiful, maybe. So yeah, there's a lot to that, right? There's a lot to the community. And it always upsets me a little when people, like, they're in the meditation video ends, because we have these nice videos now, and they leave. It's like, oh, you're missing the best part. You really got to come join us for the. And some people, so like Josh from Bridges of Meaning, he comes over quite often and just sits in the after meditation talk, right? He's not there for the full meditation. Sometimes he just comes in for the talk, and that's fine too. Like, we're happy to have people listen in and or engage as they see fit and see where it goes. So, and then if you don't want to meditate using John's method, because John's got a whole course, any method's fine. We had people experimenting with working, deliberate, intentional work, right? It was like, I'm going to work on my thing, and then come out of it when the video ends, and whatever. There's lots of ways to meditate. Maybe you pray. That's a form of meditation, as near as anybody can tell. That's fine too, right? So yeah, but there's a lot to the community aspect. Just sitting with other people and then having the discussions after with other people is another level, I would say.
Yeah, and that's totally. And you do, like I have like that's how I've been thinking back about, like uh like with Bridges of Meaning, like the book clubs, like there's having to it's like sitting out on a book club. It's like, oh, like your brain can sort of, like, if you're part of the group, and you know people in there, like, and then like you talk to them, like you can get a sense of what the conversation sort of was like. I dropped in, like, but I couldn't be fully engaged, and it was like, oh, like I got some of what was in there, but just the like, and that in itself, it's odd because that in itself is good, but just thinking about, like that is like people just need that, or there's so much positive valence to those conversations, and it's just like when, like, I don't think too much about when I miss something, like but yeah, there's just so much there there. And I think yeah, I don't know what else to
Yeah, open conversation is really important, and I think that people get confused. Like they think, "Oh, I've seen conversations go well, therefore all conversations can go well." Not really. Like because you bring intent into your conversation, and I think that there's different types of conversations, and some people are having conversations to win. That's just that, and that's fine. Like I'm not mad. Like that's fine. I like to win. I'll have a conversation with you, and I'll win, and you'll feel bad. That's fine. I'm cool. Um, yeah, but some conversations are about information, right? People just want to know, I, can I hang out with you guys, or should I avoid you like the plague because you're a cult, right? Like some people just that's what they're there for. They're not there to talk openly and honestly. They're not there to learn. They're there to figure out whether or not they fit in. And fair enough, like that's fine, right? Some people are there looking for outsourcing. Like, these guys seem pretty smart. Can I ask them questions? Oh, maybe I can. And then you ask them questions, and they're going to give you answers, and you're going to trust them. Like some people are there for that cognitive outsourcing thing. And then some people are there for the exploration. And I think the thing that makes Bridges of Meaning in particular, and Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord unique, is that there are a lot of people there to explore ideas, right? So the reason why you engage with John is because he has his science of meaning, and he gives you all this vocabulary and a framework for talking about meaning. And now you can have a discussion about meaning. You can talk about not what Peterson said, but why he said it. Not what Jonathan Peugeot says in symbolism, but why it's important, right? And then the reason why we'll say, like I got involved with BOM to some extent was, Paul talks a lot about John Vervaeke, right? Paul's involved with John Vervaeke quite a bit. Like this is our little corner of the internet or whatever. And I'm, I started with John. I watched, for some reason, somehow when it dropped, I watched Awakening from the Meaning Crisis every Friday when it dropped. And I wouldn't have done that had I known it was 50 episodes and they were going to do them one a week, because that's a year, right? And to me, it's like a year. Nothing takes me a year to learn. Like that's ridiculous. But once I was sucked in, it was too late. Once I found out, because he revealed it at some point, and I was so angry. I was so mad. I'm never going to forgive him for it. Or maybe I'll blame Amar, it's probably Amar's fault anyway. But yeah, it was very upsetting. And then as a result of that, he started to do the meditation course. And like I was like, oh, I this 50 hours is so wonderful that I want to repay him. I'll pay it. I'll be there every day. I'll do the meditation. I wasn't too interested in meditation. I was like, I've been meditating my whole life. Everyone's got meditation techniques. Who cares, right? And then I get John's meditation is way better than mine. I'm like, oh, so frustrating. And to be fair to me, though, I took like 6 months to come up with my meditation technique. So he spent like 20 years. So he's got the hours on me for sure. So but that's because Paul talks about John, and because Paul is interested in the same things, at some point it was, we're working on this model, which is John's 4 types of knowing. And it's, Mary Cohen originally proposed a change. We, by accident, fell into the same thing. And I went, oh, Mary talked about this. So maybe we're on to something if Mary already saw it. And then we found it through a different mechanism, right? So okay. Paul was sort of in the middle of all that and trying to sort it out for himself, I assume. Although who knows what Paul's up to. Those sneaky Christians. So yeah, that's how I got on the server, right? Was just his interest. And then, he wanted to explore this more himself, right? And then, of course, like I know a bunch of people who are already on there, and they're like, no, we're going to invite you on, and then you should talk to Paul. And I'm like, all right, I'll talk to anybody. I'm not picky. I'll talk to Shane. I don't care.
I remember when I saw like that just seeing like you and Manuel, I was like, oh, what are these guys like? These it's like these trailblazers. Like, what are these guys? I was like, I actually like, you guys were like, oh yeah, we're like I don't know if did you say you weren't college educated? Like you were like, oh,
No,
like
I never went to a college. I mean,
yeah,
I've been to a college, but not to take a class. Like party time,
right, right.
beer and chicks, man. I don't drink, but yeah,
Yeah,
at least in theory.
yeah. But your guys' research, like it seemed like your research methods um were like were there. You guys weren't being uh lazy about having your stuff lined up, like your um just your sources and that sort of thing. So I was like, oh, I was like um so I was impressed, but also like, oh, it's possible to be smart and smart with this sort of thing, and actually make like uh progress and and like, yeah. So that's what I got from your thing with I didn't listen to the the whole thing, but I don't know. Did your research methods, was that just you wanting to, like, did you learn that from anyone, or did you just want to be like reliable and you were like, oh, I gotta like know my
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks. I mean, I like to think Manuel and I, although I think Manuel has college, I certainly don't have any. But um, yeah, I mean, we're very methodological, right, and careful. And yeah, I mean, self-education is a big deal, you know, and all that takes is reading, right, and then being smart about your reading. Because I read very slowly, like really slowly. I just cannot read. It is just it's painful. Books, oh, it's so slow. I like short stories. Short stories are good. Like 100 pages, I'm good for 100 pages. After 100 pages, it's like, stories that take longer than 100 pages to get going. Yeah, no, 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 I don't read them. I can't, I got to be real motivated to read past 100 pages for some reason. It's so slow. And then, you know, the willingness to engage. And then, I grew up in New England, in Massachusetts, and mostly I went to public school, but I actually did end up going to private school, very exclusive private school. Actually, there were like 100 kids in the school. So that was all college level stuff to some extent. Like our writing course was read this chapter and write a paper on the chapter, like in junior high. It's like, oh, sure. Now I happen to be able to write, so that's good. That runs in the family. It's genetic, as far as I can tell. We can all write. We can all write really well, so that's good. Um, but then, I researched a lot of stuff. Right, I was in the computer industry for ages and ages, still trying to escape. But you engage with white papers, you read about things, right? There's forums, there's blog posts, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Always was, right? And then when you're in computers, obviously the stuff like blogs was around a lot longer than it was popular. For example, right, the web was around a lot longer than before it got popular. And so I was engaged in those things. There was research things on the internet like Gopher, and there were the news groups, and there were lots of ways to engage, right? Bulletin board systems had forums, right, back in the day. So there were lots of ways to engage, and you could get some really smart people giving up their time, just to work something out for themselves. For example, like Struan, who's Bridges the Meaning and also Awakening Discord, right? He's the one that got Paul onto John's work, right, and connected all these dots. And yeah, obviously he's very, very bright. And some people just they want to contribute that way, and they do. And so that's part of what we're doing, and we're very careful about our stuff. And we tend more towards questioning than making statements. Although again, people accuse us all the time. You made a statement. No, didn't make a statement. Just ask a question. Just trying to figure out where you're at, man. We're not trying to force anything on you. We're not dogmatic. We're not a cult. We're not saying John's right. We have deep disagreements with some of John's work, right? So and we'll see where it leads. Like maybe no one's right. Like there's always a third option, right? This binary thinking is not good. So you don't know, but that's what discovery is. And the number of times we've written stuff down and then realized, well, this is total garbage. How the hell did we ever think that was right? It happens all the time, but it's hard work, right? I mean, it's been almost a year, I think, that we've been working on this stuff, and it's like, ridiculous, right? And we, in some sense, we've made a lot of progress, and in another sense, we haven't made much progress, right? So it's one of those things where these things take work and they take time and they take huge amount of effort. And like I couldn't do any of this without Manuel. It's impossible. Like he catches my mistakes. He calls me out when I'm self deceiving. Like and his contributions are ridiculously invaluable, right? Like they're probably more than half. And then other people contribute too. And it's the little things, right? It's all the little things that add up. And if you take notes, if you take careful notes, and we take relatively careful notes, and you groom them, because we do groom our notes, although we're kind of behind on that, then you can build something, right? You have to be patient with yourself and your own progress too, because you are going to come up with more dumb ideas than good ideas. And it's painful because it's like, I came up with a dumb idea. I'm like, well, yeah, I do that all the time. And just recognizing how many dumb ideas you come up with in a day really helps with your humility, right? Or engaging in community where you can be humble because you can realize, oh, my perspective's not the only one. And maybe this other person's perspective is better for me too. Like, or maybe it adds something to my perspective that helps me to be a better person. And all of that, especially community engagement, helps to engender some of this humility that I think people are deeply missing.
Yeah, yeah. That humility to throw things away. I'm actually like I'm thinking about like all the notes like that like you think that every scratch is like the the golden idea, right? Or you can start to um yeah, you just think it's like the golden idea and uh cling to it, and
Invest
it
time,
yeah,
right? When you invest time in something, it becomes important to you, and fair enough, like it should.
yeah,
But Peterson talks about burning off the dead wood, right? It's like, oh, and so you have to actively go into that mode, and maybe as we were talking about earlier, like maybe the travel time and traveling by horse and walking, right, is important for that reason. It gives you that sense, right? It gives you that ability to do that. And maybe part of what we're missing is not just the lack of community that's certainly there. I guess there's a documentary, something called Bowling Alone, that makes this point, right? We don't bowl together anymore. We don't do things in community anymore the way we used to. But maybe part of it is we don't sit by ourselves and think, right, and prune and burn off the dead wood. And we don't have rituals around that. We used to have some rituals on the server that Callie used to do that were wonderful. And one of them was you take a thought and you write it on a piece of paper and then you burn it. Like, oh, that's interesting. And it could be like a personal thing or it could be a global thing. I know we were burning COVID for many a week. Let's burn this thing away, right? Like, let's burn away masks. Let's burn away, some of this other stuff. But when you engage in that process for your own thoughts, yeah, now you're making space, because you can only track so many things. Right now, you're making space. I know Sally Joe's been talking a lot about the minimalists and Marie Kondo, and if you don't love it, get rid of it. It doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it, sort of thing. It's like, yeah, right. Why? Because you have to track all that stuff. It's taking up space. So thoughts take up space in your head, and so maybe you got to get rid of the old thoughts to get new thoughts, and then maybe that helps you revivify your own thinking and makes you better, right? And some of that process of, oh, it's okay to let go of some things, right? Because we all have to let go of everything eventually. So learning to let go of things, especially our own creations, yeah, that seems like an important lesson.
yeah. I think there are like some things that you can like uh like there are things worth uh holding on to, but I think that's the point of like scrutiny, right? Is that you
Right.
yeah, yeah,
But you have to do it. You have to take time and you have to intentionally engage in scrutinizing things, whether it be your thoughts or your beliefs or your religion or the science or whatever it is, what you know about. I mean, one of the big problems, one of the sort of things I haven't really I should probably email John about this. One of the things I have a problem with John is he talks about distributed cognition, and especially in the technology realm, but also in general, like, oh, distributed is good. Like distributed is good, but I think that's only half the story. We're not distributing cognition. We're outsourcing cognition, and some of that's distributed. And some distributed cognition is good, but like mobs are bad. That's distributed cognition, right? Because you're letting the mob rule over what your actions are, right? There's madness of crowds, right? Right. So that's okay, right? Oh, yeah, crowds can be mad. So just distributed cognition isn't good, but acknowledging that distributed cognition is a form of outsourced cognition and that you outsource your cognition all the time, right? To rituals, to narrative, to other people, to authority, right? And it's like, oh, well, maybe I should scrutinize that. Like maybe I should recognize, oh, I believe things because people told them to me. Okay, it's good to know, because now you can look at it instead of through it. Like John talks a lot about looking through versus looking at. He's got his glasses. He says you can look through your glasses, you can look at your glasses, you can clean your glasses and put them back on and then look through them again. And maybe you can tell whether or not they're clearer. Yes. Well, you need to do that with the outsourced cognition. Like you need to look at the outsourced cognition and say, hey, is this guy still telling the truth? Or has the theory changed? Because that happens all the time, right? New information comes in. And if you're just going on the outsourced cognition from 10 years ago, man, it's changed, right?
Right.
And that's why people get into trouble with their jobs. They're like, I've been doing the same thing for 10 years. Yeah, and things change, like entropy.
Yep.
So
Yep.
now you're going to do something different, kid. Sorry.
Software,
That's the way
hardware.
it works. Yeah, yeah. And we've got to be aware of that. Otherwise, it possesses us.
Yeah. Totally. That's like the double. It's like with today's. I was actually talking with Jacob about outsourced cognition, and he was the idea of thinking for yourself. He was basically criticizing that, and I understand. I think it's good to try and see through fresh eyes and just know, and then knowing where your cognition is like it's important to know how reliable the place you're getting the place you're outsourcing your cognition to, and that's why you get multiple you really need to know if the procedure is working, if you're about to get a if operating on cancer cells or something.
Yeah, it's important. I love Jacob. Jacob's great. He and I agree on almost everything. It's fantastic. And he always comes at it from a different perspective, which is nice because it's good that you got here too and you took a different route. Oh, well, that means it's a place, right? Like, or more likely means it's a place. So yeah, I mean, it's important. You can't look at something you don't know about, and you need to look at things and not just through them. And that's part of what I believe is being trained in John's meditation course, is this art of looking at versus looking through, and making you more likely to do it all the time. Like not just in meditation. You're focused on training it in meditation, we'll say, although maybe focus is a bad word. You're concentrating or intentionally training this at and through thing in the meditation courses as you're going through the meditations daily. And then maybe not in every meditation, but maybe one aspect in every meditation. And sometimes you are switching. And then maybe that trains your brain to do it more often in the real world. And maybe that is what engenders wisdom and puts you on that wisdom journey, right? It gets you on that path, and towards the good, hopefully. And the group keeps you sane so you don't spiritually bypass or like, oh, I meditate, therefore I'm awesome, because people do that. People do that all the time, right? People do the same with drugs. Well, I had a profound experience, so now I'm awesome. It's like, nah, you're kind of the same jerk you were last week, but I'm glad you think you're better, but you're not. Right?
Yeah, you're
That's why you need the group.
eyes are more.
That's why you need the communities, right? The communities is there to make you maybe you're not so awesome, even though you had a profound experience, right? Maybe the integration's important in profound experiences. Maybe there's a lot going on, right? Like maybe, I don't know, but maybe, right? It's worth thinking about. And that's what the meditation does. It's like to get you out of your like, oh, I know what's going on. Yeah, sit with yourself for 5 minutes silently, like stare at a blank wall. Like, go ahead. What's going on there? Because there's stuff going on. It's so one of the things Peterson talked about that it sounds kind of silly, like you put your hand in a dark room and see what happens, right? Like watch what happens in your head. And I was like, oh, I remember doing this as a kid. Oh yeah, it's all kinds of wacky, but that's a kid thing. Yeah, I put my hand in the dark room. Oh yeah, there was stuff there. I was like, what is going on? Thought I was adulting? Guess not. Like, because it never goes away, right? You have to be aware of dragons, tigers, lions, bears, oh my, right? Like they're still there. So you got to know. So your brain still projects and make sure that you're safe. And in the dark, you're just not safe. It doesn't matter that it's your room. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I have if you want to come, you can. There's the book club is happening. We're in at 5, so like in 10 minutes here. But at like I would like love to like can continue this conversation. Maybe do like a part 2 at some point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you wanted to get into the Vin
Yeah.
Armani talk that PVK did and some
Yeah.
of the other stuff, right? So
Yeah.
we can certainly do that.
Yeah. So I mean we've got a okay. So I mean, what did you? I actually like. What did you think of the Vin Armani talk? Because I only watched a little bit of it. I tried to catch up, but I had to like just life basically.
Yeah, no, I mean I commented on the video. It was a very mysterious video, right? Like they talked a lot about mysticism, in my mind without necessarily defining it as closely as I'd like, right? And so I very much got the impression in that talk that
Like
because
a play by play
weird.
for all the yeah all the crazy. Man.
Yeah, I mean, I got the impression I went on Bridges of Meaning one night and they were like, "How? That's not helpful. I want to know about this." So yeah, it was a very strange video. I mean, highly recommend. Paul's videos are excellent. He's been putting out really high quality videos. But I would say since he did his interview, he really has been his summary videos have been really next level stuff. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll get into that. Maybe we'll like toss some ideas around, or just yeah. Next. I don't know. When's good here.
Yeah, we'll figure out a time. It'll be great.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Mark, for being on the podcast, and I think people will really enjoy what what we did. Yeah.
Well, I hope so. And thanks for having me because it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Shane. I really enjoy it.
Yes. Thank you, Mark. Have a good night, and I'll see you. I'll see you on the servers.
Absolutely. See you soon. Have a great night.